The moment of reckoning, the white silk tightened around my neck, stealing my final breaths. Your son drowned at 3. Your daughter was defiled and murdered by bandits at 10. I did it all, and your husband knew everything. Lady Claudia's venomous voice pierced through my fading consciousness. My children, my innocent children, their father had allowed it all. As darkness claimed me, I saw a flash of silver armor breaking through the door. Evangeline. Then nothing. When I opened my eyes again, I was standing in the tea house, alive, young, and face with the man who would destroy my life. This time, when Sebastian collapsed before my carriage, I looked down at him with cold eyes and gave a single command: run him over. Hola, what do you think of our story? Your support is my motivation to keep updating. Feel free to click on the homepage to see more of the full story. Please make sure you are in a comfortable position. We'll begin the main story shortly. Leave a comment below and tell us which city you read our story in. I died alone in this world, with not a single beloved left, my parents gone, my children dead or driven mad. My only remaining relative, Sebastian Ashford, had long despised me. He wouldn't even deign to see me one last time. Before my death, the only visitor I received was Lady Claudia, my husband Sebastian's concubine and his cousin. She swept and dressed in silk brocade, her hair adorned with jade and pearls, servants flanking her on all sides. One might easily mistake her for the true mistress of the Prime Minister's manor. Oh my madam, how have you come to such a state? How are these servants attending to you? The room remained silent. No one answered her. I laughed bitterly. Wasn't it you who ordered them to bring me only 3 meals a day and forbade anyone else from attending me? She adjusted her vermilion hairpin. Ah yes, this servant nearly forgot. Today I've come to share joyful news with madam. I've heard your cousin has won a great victory and will soon return triumphant. A spark of hope ignited within me. Cousin Vincent had doted on me since childhood. He was perhaps the last person in this world who would care for me. But my joy was extinguished before it could fully form. What a pity, you'll never see him again. Madam, as Lady Claudia's words fell, a maid stepped forward bearing a tray with white silk, a dagger, and poisoned wine. Lady Claudia smiled sweetly. I grant you the most painful death, the white silk. Maids pressed me down onto the bed. My illness, ravaged body had no strength to resist. I shouted at them furiously. How dare you? I am your Prime Minister's wife. Summon Sebastian to see me. In truth, I didn't particularly wish to live, but I refused to die at Lady Claudia's hands. Years ago, she had caused my miscarriage, leaving me with permanent ailments. When I discovered evidence and told Sebastian, not only did he not punish Lady Claudia, he went to her chambers that very night. He said then, Claudia is gentle and kind. She would never do such things. If you wish to frame someone, there should be limits. Frame her. Why would I use our child to frame a mere concubine? But he was coldly indifferent, as if the murdered child wasn't his own. Later, I understood, because he didn't love me. He couldn't love our children either. Unfortunately, I understood too late. My words struck Lady Claudia's sore spot. Her expression darkened abruptly. You want to see cousin? Then let me tell you, your prolonged illness was caused by poison I gave you. Your son who drowned, your daughter killed by bandits. I did it all, and cousin knew everything. You shameless woman, using your family's power to steal cousin from me. How could he ever love you? He wished you dead. I froze, forgetting to struggle. I thought of 3-year-old Pierce, drowned. I thought of 10-year-old Annabelle, defiled and brutally murdered by bandits. I thought of those pale, swollen, broken bodies. So it was true. Their own father had known, had even condoned it all. Bloody tears streamed down my face. All of this happened because I married Sebastian. But back then, hadn't we been mutually in love? Hadn't he voluntarily come to propose? I opened my mouth to speak, but the white silk around my neck tightened relentlessly. I could say nothing. In the final moment before consciousness faded, I glimpsed a silver figure bursting through the door. Evangeline. Evangeline. I jolted awake and looked toward the voice. My close friend, Rosalie, was staring at me. What are you thinking about? The suffocating pain of the white silk seemed to linger at my neck. Yet when I focused on it, there was nothing. Before I could collect myself, a warm hand suddenly gripped my shoulder. Evangeline, are you all right? I turned to look, my heart skipping violently. How long had it been since I'd seen this face? In my previous life, after my Liu family's downfall implicated the Shi family, he had gone to the frontier as a commoner. Until my death, I never saw him again. Vincent Laurent, courtesy name. When she and my cousin, I instinctively reached for his arm, but he seemed to remember something and quickly withdrew his hand from my shoulder. You too. Rosalie's gaze darted between us. I belatedly realized she might have misunderstood. Just as I was about to explain, commotion erupted from downstairs. A server's anxious voice carried up, "How can you eat without paying? Pay up." Then a painfully familiar voice responded, "I am not the one who invited you." I had heard that voice countless times, dismissive, cold, disgusted. That voice belonged to Sebastian. This scene I would never forget. I had dreamed of this day countless times, filled with regret. This was my first meeting with Sebastian, but something about him seemed strange. In my previous life, he had been panicked, afraid, angry, but never this composed. Just then, Rosalie spoke curiously. "That man downstairs seems to have been tricked. Earlier, I saw the Minister Zhao's son bring them in, but now he is alone. Judging by his appearance, he is a poor scholar who probably can't afford to pay. Evangeline, should we help him?" Hearing this, my whole body trembled. In my previous life, I had felt compassion at this very moment and paid for him. Thus began our toxic entanglement, leading to irreversible consequences. The next second, a warm cloak settled over my shoulders. "Don't mind him. Let's go." Vincent's eyes were dark as ink, revealing no emotion. I quickly nodded and followed him downstairs. Rosalie wanted to say something, but I grabbed her hand and pulled her along. In my previous life, Rosalie had also developed feelings for Sebastian this very day. She even broke off our friendship when I married him. I had already wasted one lifetime. This time, I wouldn't jump into that fire pit again, and neither would Rosalie. As I passed Sebastian, though I knew he didn't recognize me yet, I instinctively lowered my head. "Miss," my heart jumped. Sebastian was staring at me, his eyes holding a strange expectation. He looked just as I remembered, though gaunt. His bearing remained elegant. No wonder both Rosalie and I had fallen for him. Vincent's cold voice interrupted my thoughts. "What is it?" Sebastian stared at me unblinkingly. This humble scholar forgot his coin purse today. "Might the young lady assist me? I will repay you 100-fold in the future." I looked at him, decades of fear from his cold gaze flooding back. Suddenly, a warm hand supported my back, patting it gently twice. As if saying, "Don't be afraid." Courage surged through me. I remembered that in this moment, my parents were alive. I had true friends. I was no longer alone. Everything truly had reset. I straightened my back. "Repay 100-fold. Such bold words. May I ask, how will a common scholar like you repay me 100 times over?" Surprise flashed across Sebastian's face as he stared at me blankly. I turned to the server. "What are you waiting for? Take this freeloader to the magistrate." The server bowed repeatedly. Yes, Miss Liu. Right away." Sebastian stood frozen in place. He muttered to himself. "Impossible. How can this be?" I didn't want to see his face for another second. I pulled the cloak tight and turned to leave. "No, Evangeline, don't go." As Sebastian called out, resistance tugged at me. He had grabbed my cloak. The next second, cold steel flashed. The cloak tore in two. Vincent's sword pointed at Sebastian's throat, his expression fierce, insolent. "How dare you speak the given name of a duke's daughter?" Sebastian ignored the blade at his throat, staring fixedly at me instead. Seeing Vincent about to strike, I quickly called out, "Forget it." Sebastian was a law-abiding citizen. Killing him in broad daylight would bring trouble to the Shi family. Even if he must die, there was no rush. Vincent was summoned home right after we left. He arranged for Rosalie and me to return by carriage. Before leaving, he earnestly instructed me, "You two young ladies are vulnerable alone. If anything happens, don't complicate matters unnecessarily. Return home early. Don't make me worry, understood?" Rosalie laughed behind her hand. With all these servants and guards, what could possibly happen? Vincent didn't respond, only fixed me with a meaningful, somber gaze. I thought for a moment, then nodded. Only then did he mount his horse and depart. On the way back, I stared out the window, lost in thought. The tragic end of my previous life remained vivid. This rebirth still felt unreal. Bang! The carriage jolted violently. Rosalie and I pitched forward from the impact. The coachman's voice came, "Forgive me, miss. Some blind scholar has collapsed in the middle of the road." Rosalie immediately pulled back the curtain. A familiar figure lay in the road ahead. Rosalie cried out in alarm. "It is that young master from before. What is wrong with him?" Sebastian lay in the middle of the road, his face deathly pale, as if he might expire at any moment. Yet he wasn't unconscious. His eyes were open. He looked at me weakly. "This humble scholar has suffered a sudden illness. Might the young lady assist me? I would be eternally grateful." Rosalie repeated exactly what she'd said in my previous life. "Evangeline, he looks like he won't last. Should we take him to a physician?" I didn't answer immediately, but stared at him for a long moment. I was the legitimate daughter of a duke's manor, of noble status, while he was merely a poor scholar. Without my affection, no matter how he schemed for 10 more years, he wouldn't be worthy of carrying my shoes. With a mere gesture, I could crush him. Sebastian on the ground didn't know my thoughts. gazing at me with hopeful expectation. I stared into his eyes and ordered the coachman, word by word, run him over. What? The coachman and Rosalie asked simultaneously. Rosalie rushed to exit the carriage to help Sebastian. I grabbed her hand and shouted at the coachman, "What are you waiting for?" The coachman instinctively cracked his whip. The carriage surged forward. I saw Sebastian's shocked expression. The next second, his figure disappeared beneath the carriage. The expected scream didn't come, only a low, muffled groan. I lifted the curtain and looked back. Sebastian lay motionless on the ground, his fate uncertain. I lowered the curtain expressionlessly. Sebastian, our score was far from settled. Rosalie was terrified, staring at me blankly. Evangeline, you've been very strange today. Are you possessed? You just killed someone in the street. I had no heart to comfort her, only a few instructions. He is not dead, and he is no good person. Stay away from him from now on. That was all I could say. If I spoke of my previous life's experiences, I'd likely be taken for mad and sent to a nunnery. Whether she'd heed my warning was up to Rosalie herself. For days after returning home, I confined myself to my courtyard. Rosalie came looking for me many times. I refused to see her. I heard that Sebastian had been injured in the street that day, his leg broken, and was taken to a physician by a good Samaritan. The incident stirred some gossip, with people saying the Duke of England's manor was bullying the weak. But since Sebastian himself didn't pursue the matter and didn't appear in public again, it was forgotten. I didn't regret what I'd done that day. I knew clearly. My hatred for Sebastian couldn't be resolved simply by not marrying him. In my previous life, he had risen rapidly in court by leveraging my family's influence. At first, he treated me decently, until my father died of old age. Then he suddenly tore away the peaceful facade and revealed his true nature. He not only immediately took his cousin Claudia as a concubine, but within 6 months married 13 more concubines. I knew he wasn't a lustful man. He did this solely to spite me, his wife. He deliberately favored concubines over his wife, making me unable to hold up my head among officials' wives. Even our children, thinking of Pierce and Annabelle, I was consumed with grief and rage. They died before reaching adulthood, murdered cruelly. Yet I had lived under the same roof as their killer, completely unaware. They admired their father, constantly asking when he would visit them. I sent people to find him, receiving only Sebastian's cold dismissals. Until their deaths, the 2 children never received their father's love. Their deaths were even tacitly approved by Sebastian. How could I not hate all of this? I had a chance to start over, but my Pierce and Annabelle would never have the opportunity to be born again. Thinking this, the chaos in my mind suddenly became clear. I understood what outcome I wanted. I wanted Sebastian dead. After reaching this conclusion, I immediately began preparations. In a few days, the imperial examinations would be held. Sebastian would pass and become a presented scholar. Wanza appointed to office. Killing him wouldn't be so simple. To be safe, I didn't deploy my family's guards, just in case something went wrong and damaged the Lee family's reputation. But whether in my previous life or now, I was a sheltered lady with little knowledge of the outside world. So I feigned illness and found an opportunity to slip out. The capital had a place called Heavenly Fragrance Tower, where people from all walks of life gathered. There I should find what I needed. But unexpectedly, I ran into Vincent right at the door. Fortunately, I wore a veiled hat. He only glanced at me before looking away. I breathed a sigh of relief and continued toward the tower. But as I entered, a malicious gaze fell upon me. I turned to look. A drunk was swaying toward me. Just as I considered how to handle this, a force gripped my wrist. I turned in surprise. It was Vincent. Vincent didn't look at me, only gave the drunk a cold glance. Just one look, and the drunk froze. Not daring to move, Vincent led me directly to the 3rd floor. Only at a corner did he release me. I kept my head down. "Cousin, what are you doing here?" Vincent's tone was somewhat displeased. "You are too bold, coming here alone." If I hadn't heard what? Vincent didn't continue, changing the subject. "What do you want to do?" Seeing he didn't seem inclined to scold me, I nodded. Since childhood, this cousin had doted on me most. If any young master spoke inappropriately to me, he'd be beaten unable to leave his bed the next day. I thought, even if I said I wanted to kill someone, he wouldn't bat an eye. In this world, women face difficulties and many restrictions. With help, things would be much easier. Vincent should be trustworthy. "I want to kill someone." I spoke calmly, but this time it was Vincent who fell silent. After a moment, he only asked, "That poor scholar, Sebastian." I nodded. He asked nothing more, leading me away directly. "Leave this to me. A young lady like you shouldn't stain your hands with blood." He then escorted me all the way home. "He'll die before the examinations." As we parted, I couldn't help asking, "Cousin, won't you ask me why?" Vincent casually replied, "It is just killing someone. "Whatever you want to do, I'll help you." I was stunned, but he had already mounted his horse and ridden away. Not until his figure disappeared from view did I remember I'd forgotten to ask why he came to the Duke's manor today. For the next several days I waited for Vincent's news, but the examinations ended before he finally appeared, arriving late. The moment he saw me, he shook his head with a dark expression. Arriving with him were my father, the Duke of England, and Sebastian. I never imagined that in this lifetime, Sebastian would appear at the Duke of England's manor. Even treated courteously by father had despised him so much before. Father introduced me to Sebastian with a smile, his words full of admiration for him. I numbly endured Sebastian's burning gaze upon me. Fortunately, he soon left with father for the study. Otherwise, I feared I couldn't maintain my composure. After they left, I looked at Vincent. He said gravely, "My apologies. He's somehow connected with Uncle. In the days before the exams, he was either with Uncle or in crowded places. There was no opportunity to strike." I took a deep breath. "It is not your fault." Sebastian growing close to my father was unexpected to everyone. In my previous life, father had detested Sebastian utterly, scolding me many times. A commoner upstart, scheming and petty, how is he worthy of entering my Duke's manor? I didn't raise you to lower yourself and marry such a base person. Then I had been obsessed, convinced Sebastian was the best man in the capital. I even defied father's supposed stubbornness. Everything that followed was my own fault. But with everything reset, I had resolved to correct things. Why did father suddenly appreciate him? My thoughts were in turmoil. I couldn't understand the implications. Days later, the examination results were announced. Unexpectedly, Sebastian wasn't an ordinary presented scholar as in my previous life, but won first place. The examination champion, with his impoverished background, father invited him to the manor to celebrate. At the banquet, after some wine, father said with flushed face, "I knew you were no ordinary person. Today's achievement proves you worthy." His praise for Sebastian was extraordinarily high. Sebastian smiled modestly. Father seemed drunk, actually saying, "With your talent, you'll surely win the Emperor's favor in the palace examination. Your future is bright. You are still unmarried. My daughter, though modest, is called the capital's first beauty, perhaps." Alarmed, I quickly interrupted. "Father, you've had too much to drink." He was truly drunk, being helped away by servants in a daze. Mother hurriedly followed. I lingered behind and was stopped by Sebastian. "I am no longer that poor scholar. If you are willing, She is not willing." Vincent stood up at some point, blocking his view of me. I didn't listen to what else they said. After just a few steps, Vincent caught up with me. He followed silently, making the maids nervous. As we neared my courtyard, I finally couldn't help asking, "What does cousin want to say?" I waved my hand. The maids wisely left. Vincent hesitated for a long time before speaking softly. "Marry me." His voice was full of tension. I was too shocked to speak. He continued on his own. "Sebastian is determined to have you. Being targeted by such a wolf is troublesome. Women must marry eventually. I don't wish to seek some beloved. Why not marry me? With our families already connected, you won't be wronged marrying into mine." I didn't hear the rest. I fled. What he said was too much of a shock. After all, in 2 lifetimes, I had never considered marrying Vincent. I regarded him as a respected elder brother, never with romantic feelings. I don't know when Vincent left that day. I only know I didn't sleep all night. Fortunately, father never again mentioned marrying me to Sebastian. For a while after, I was distracted and dazed every day. Then finally, one night, I figured it out. I thought, what did it matter if there were no romantic feelings? In noble families, arranged marriages were perfectly normal. What was the result of pursuing romance, as I had in my previous life? An estranged marriage, all my children dead. Now Sebastian was watching me like a hawk. If marriage could completely free me from him, why not? Moreover, Vincent's father was my uncle, with only one son, and he'd cherished me since childhood. Marrying into that family, my life would surely be comfortable. But just as I'd gone sleepless and prepared to visit the Shea Manor the next day, an imperial edict arrived at the Duke's manor, a marriage decree, granting me in marriage to the new top scholar, Sebastian. I stared at the eunuch in disbelief. "Who?" The eunuch smiled. "Is Miss Liu so happy she is confused?" The new top scholar, Sebastian. Even after my parents saw him off with smiles, I hadn't recovered. During those days, Sebastian had already excelled in the palace examination, winning first rank. How was it possible? With his abilities in my previous life, he barely managed second rank. That Sebastian. I knew from the start he was steady and mature, unlike others his age. As expected, poor families produce outstanding sons. His policy essay won the Emperor's highest praise. Father's voice brought me back to reality. Yes, Thinking of Sebastian's various differences from my previous life, I understood. He had also been reborn. Why his attitude toward me changed so drastically after rebirth, I couldn't fathom. Had he developed a conscience? But it was hard to say if Sebastian possessed such a thing. Regardless, the imperial edict had been issued. There was no recourse. I couldn't marry him again, even death. No, he should be the one to die. I couldn't die. As my head ached, a knock sounded at the door. "Evangeline, it is me." Vincent's deep voice came from outside. I sighed and opened the door. He stood at the doorway without entering. "I heard you were. I came as soon as I could. What do you plan to do?" I smiled bitterly. "If only I'd agreed to you that day. It is my fault for being indecisive, leading to this." Vincent shook his head. "It is not your fault. For women, marriage is like a gamble. You are right to consider carefully. Whatever you want to do, I support you." Looking into Vincent's deep eyes, strength flowed into my heart. I did have a bold idea. I moved closer to Vincent and softly told him my plan. He looked at me in surprise twice, but still nodded. Afterward, I stayed in the manor daily, showing no resistance to the marriage. Sebastian visited several times, but I claimed illness and avoided him. I had planned to wait until Sebastian received his official position, but that day came faster than expected. War suddenly erupted at the frontier. The court desperately needed talent, and he was appointed Hanlon Academy compiler. My opportunity had arrived. One morning, a woman knelt at the Duke's manor gates, claiming to be Scholar Sebastian's mistress, begging me, his betrothed, to allow her a place. I knew this woman well, Lady Claudia, who had been so arrogant in my previous life. She wept pitifully, begging me to accept her, to spare her life. I remembered when she first entered the household, she also played the fragile victim, deferring to me in everything. Later, after my family's decline, she became insufferably arrogant. Reborn, she was still so good at acting. By now, many pedestrians had gathered, witnessing the scene and gossiping. Those unaware might think I, the Duke's daughter, was already mistreating my husband's concubine before even entering his household. However, this was exactly the effect I wanted. Once enough people had seen it, ensuring the news would reach Sebastian's ears. I had Claudia brought inside. When Claudia saw me and was about to speak, I sneered, "Tie her up." That evening, I arranged to meet him at a tavern. This was my first time actively seeking him, but given Claudia's scene that morning, he shouldn't be suspicious. Indeed, he entered looking anxious and explained immediately. "She is not my mistress, but my cousin. I made her no promises. Evangeline, don't misunderstand." I only stared at him for a long while, until he grew uneasy. Then I said with disgust, "Sebastian, it has been so long." "What?" I said. "You and Lady Claudia are still just as revolting. Harming me once wasn't enough. You want a second time." Sebastian couldn't speak for a long time, finally managing hoarsely, "You also have memories of the previous life." I laughed coldly. "If scum like you can have another chance, why shouldn't I?" Sebastian's expression was complex, too complex for me to read. The next moment, he suddenly knelt before me. "Evangeline, everything before was my fault. I was possessed, judged people wrongly, and ruined your life. I truly know I was wrong. Give me one more chance. This time I'll treat you well, all right?" I watched Sebastian's reddening eyes, suddenly wanting to laugh. "Why didn't you cherish me when I was alive? After you tormented me to death, now you repent." Sebastian tried anxiously to say more. "After you died." "Vincent," but suddenly he couldn't speak, his body going limp and collapsing. His eyes, wide with disbelief, fixed on me before losing consciousness completely. The door was knocked softly. A handsome man entered, bringing Claudia. I lowered my gaze and left the room. Passing the man, I instructed softly, "Entertain them well." The man was a male courtesan from the capital's elegant breeze house, specially hired by me. The room had been filled with colorless, odorless incense. From the moment Sebastian entered, he had walked into my trap. I endured the disgust of reminiscing with him only to buy time. Tomorrow morning, news of the new top scholar's debauchery in a tavern would spread throughout the streets. The current emperor detested male intimacy most. Now his personally selected top scholar publicly hired a male courtesan. Wasn't this a slap in his face? Of course, this was just a small lesson for Sebastian. The scheme that would truly destroy him was yet to come. After boarding the carriage, Vincent was already inside. Seeing me unharmed, he seemed relieved. I asked him, "Did everything go smoothly?" He nodded, and the carriage headed toward our destination. When we arrived, night had fallen, and the streets were peaceful. In the darkness, the golden characters on the plaque above read Sebastian Manor, gleaming brilliantly. This residence was bestowed by the Emperor upon the top scholar Sebastian. In my previous life, this mansion was gifted after our marriage. when he repeatedly advanced by leveraging the Duke's Manor's influence. This lifetime, after winning top honors, he proactively requested the Emperor grant him this residence. When I received this news, I felt heaven was helping me. Aunts, I had lived here for many years. I knew every plant, every tree, the layout of every courtyard intimately. This familiarity would allow me to do many things. Vincent waved his hand. People arranged in advance opened the gate from inside. From a corner of the alley, a carriage was pulled out, black. Clothed figures lifted large chests from the carriage, filing into Sebastian Manor. Inside was completely silent. The operation went undetected. Sebastian had lived here less than half a month. Only his half-blind mother resided within, along with some maids and servants, easily avoided. In Sebastian Manor's study hung a painting of a beauty. Touching the beauty's eyes would open a mechanism in the wall. Inside was a secret chamber. In my previous life, Sebastian kept confidential court documents there. This time, it would hold the blade that would kill him. Chests were placed inside one by one until the small chamber was filled. Upon leaving, some traces were inevitably left. If Sebastian saw them, he would surely realize someone had been here. Unfortunately, he would never have the chance to return. After leaving Sebastian Manor, Vincent escorted me back. He remained silent throughout the journey. I actually feared he would ask how I knew about the secret chamber, but he never asked. Not until we reached the Duke's Manor's back gate did he speak his first words. "I am going to the battlefield." I was shocked. When was this decided? In my previous life, he only went to the frontier years after my marriage, after being implicated and demoted. This time, why? Vincent said calmly. It was decided at this morning's court session. Father is the commander. I am the deputy general. We depart tomorrow. I came to bid you farewell. I thought for a long time, only managing. Be safe. Vincent nodded, but showed no intention of leaving. The atmosphere grew awkward. I tried to lighten it. Cousin, won't uncle notice all the things you gave me? Hearing this, Vincent laughed. I was relieved I'd chosen the right topic. Those were betrothal gifts my mother prepared for me. Who I give them to is my choice. Besides, they'll ultimately be used as military provisions, not a waste. The next second, he continued with a faint smile. I froze, then coughed violently. Forgive me, cousin. Evangeline isn't feeling well and must return first. I lifted my skirts, jumped from the carriage, and ran. Vincent's smiling voice came from behind. Will you come see me off tomorrow? I nodded haphazardly, only after returning to my room realizing he might not have seen. Early the next morning I rose before dawn. Today the army departed. Many went to the city gates to see them off. When I arrived, it was already crowded. Fortunately, servants helped me reach a higher vantage point. On steady, I immediately saw that silvery, white figure at the front, so familiar, like that flash of silver I'd seen before dying. I realized I had indeed never seen Vincent in silver armor. Sebastian's words from yesterday suddenly came to mind. After you died, Vincent. I hadn't listened carefully then. Now thinking back, he meant Vincent. After I died, was that silver figure I saw truly Vincent? What had Vincent done to Sebastian to cause such a drastic change in his attitude? Before I could puzzle it out, as if sensing something, that silvery, white figure at the front suddenly turned. The distance was too great to see his expression clearly. I could only see him looking in this direction. Somehow, I instinctively felt he was looking at me. We gazed at each other across the distance, a strange feeling welling up inside. But he quickly turned back. As drums sounded, the army departed. Simultaneously, a major incident occurred in the capital. On my way back, I heard discussions all around. Did you hear? The new top scholar and a man spent the entire night carousing at a tavern. Another corrected, "Hey, you don't know the full story. That woman wasn't a prostitute. She was the scholar's cousin. And that man, he was a male courtesan." Right. Today the court was closed. He slept until noon, and another guest accidentally opened his door while drunk. That is how it was discovered. How scandalous. Seminone spat. Scandalous. I call it shameful. I heard His Majesty bestowed the Duke of England's legitimate daughter to him in marriage. That Miss Leo is renowned as the capital's first beauty. He, a poor scholar, is already reaching above his station to match her, yet he dares such debauchery. Truly. I pulled my veiled hat lower, avoiding gazes, and boarded the carriage. The new top scholar had paraded through the streets not long ago, young and successful, basking in glory. Now such a salacious affair had emerged, spreading through the capital streets like wildfire. I heard that within the palace, the emperor was furious and immediately had Sebastian imprisoned. Normally, officials caught in brothels would damage their reputation and face impeachment from censors, but wouldn't be directly imprisoned for trial. I knew that memorial had been seen by the emperor. The current emperor was reasonably enlightened. Now the frontier was under enemy invasion, with 3 cities already fallen. This battle was unavoidable. Of course, there were also conservative factions at court who argued that war was costly to the people. But those were hereditary noble families with illustrious achievements for generations. Sebastian, a newcomer, naturally wouldn't be so presumptuous. His original memorial merely followed the majority in supporting the emperor. But Vincent and I had arranged for someone to swap the contents from the inner cabinet. I had written it myself, supporting the conservative faction. In my previous life, I had adored Sebastian and often copied his poetry and essays. Later, during the years he neglected me, I could only pass my days this way, so I could imitate his handwriting with 99% accuracy. Even if Sebastian himself saw it, he would pause in confusion. The rumors of Sebastian's preference for men already displeased the emperor. The memorial touched his deepest taboo. In his rage, he had Sebastian imprisoned. But this wasn't the end. That very day, an anonymous accusation was delivered to the chief censor's residence. The letter claimed that the new top scholar Sebastian, barely half a month in office, had already engaged in corruption and bribery, a true parasite of the nation. The letter even detailed the approximate amounts, so the chief censor truthfully reported it to the emperor. This was like lighting a fire in hot oil. The emperor immediately sent people to search, and indeed found a large quantity of valuables in the secret chamber within the study. The emperor was enraged, directly stripping Sebastian of his office and sentencing him to exile 3,000 li away. My betrothal to him was naturally dissolved. Father was reprimanded a few times for poor judgment of character, and the matter was settled. Thus, the new top scholar Sebastian, after enjoying only this brief moment of glory, exited the political stage. As for Lady Claudia, removed from the struggles of the inner chambers, she posed no threat to me. Her parents were dead, her reputation ruined. The day after Sebastian was imprisoned, having lost all hope, she threw herself into the river. During Sebastian's imprisonment, he sent several letters through jailers, requesting to see me. The day before he left the capital, I went to see him. I knew this parting would be forever. Before his death, I wanted to hear what he had to say. Sebastian sat upright, on a straw mat, wearing tattered prison garb, his exposed skin covered in wounds. Clearly, his time in prison had been difficult. Yet, despite his pale complexion, his spine remained straight, showing a measure of dignity. "You came." I stood outside the cell door, responding flatly. "Yes, I came." Sebastian opened his eyes, not speaking immediately, but carefully studying me for a long while. "It has been so long since I've looked at you properly." Seeing my furrowed brow, he immediately changed the subject. "I accept my defeat to you wholeheartedly. In truth, I always knew I wasn't worthy of you. Are you here to reminisce?" Sebastian smiled and nodded. "Yes, having wronged you for 2 lifetimes, if I don't say more before dying, I'll die with lingering regrets." I frowned but said nothing more. Sebastian didn't expect a response and continued on his own. He said, "You were called the capital's first beauty, and the title was well deserved. When I first saw you, my heart filled with joy. Learning you liked me too, I was ecstatic. But the first time I visited your manor and saw those magnificent buildings, I thought of my temporary thatched cottage and felt profound inferiority. My family was humble, my talents meager compared to you. I was nothing, if not for a handsome face. That day your father left in anger. I anxiously followed him to the study, hoping to express my feelings. But I overheard him say I was a commoner upstart, scheming and petty, a base person. Afterward, everywhere I went, I heard people say I was overreaching to connect with the Duke's manor. Love turned to hate. From then on, I didn't know how to face you. In the following years, I couldn't hold my head up before you. I clawed my way up in the bureaucracy by any means, until I became Prime Minister and your father passed away. Only then could I breathe. I loved you as long as I hated you, so I took revenge on you, ignored your grievances, and couldn't even face Pierce and Annabelle. Hearing him mention Pierce and Annabelle, I finally couldn't help interrupting. "Silence, you are unworthy of being a husband or father. You used your pathetic pride as an excuse to trample on others' feelings, then in the end play the devoted lover. You sicken me." Sebastian smiled bitterly. Yes, such a ridiculous excuse was the only thing this poor scholar had to armor himself with. They say all pursuits are inferior, only study is superior. How laughable that after 10 years of hard study, even passing the imperial exams in the eyes of you noble families, I remained a base person. Number I looked at him, enunciating each word. An upright man born between heaven and earth should neither shame heaven above nor wrong people below. You degraded yourself. You read all those sage teachings and they went to waste. Sebastian looked at me calmly. Yes, only after you died did I realize how terribly wrong I was. That day, when I returned to the manor, I found it draped in mourning white. Vincent stood at the gate with a sword, telling me I had failed you. Only then did I learn that after I left in anger, you defied your father for my sake and were beaten for the first time. I learned that when you appeared before me after 2 months, behind it were 2 months of hunger strikes and resistance. I also learned, here Sebastian's voice caught. I also learned that to ease my mind during the exams, you secretly arranged for someone to care for my mother. I always thought it was Claudia. Mother told me to treat you well, but I failed you. When everything finally started over, I wanted desperately to make amends. But you no longer seemed to need me. He finally grew agitated, rushing to the bars, even reaching out to grab my skirt. If only you didn't have memories of the previous life, I could have properly compensated you for my mistakes. You wouldn't. I looked down at him, slowly withdrawing my skirt. You are like a beautifully decorated pastry filled with poison. I mistakenly ate it once. There will never be a second time. Your regret, your guilt. None of it concerns me. I don't believe you. You've reached this point entirely through your own actions. Let us part ways here. I didn't look at the utter despair in Sebastian's eyes, turning to leave. Behind me, Sebastian called out, I'll atone for my sins myself. Mother is unwell and truly cares for you. I beg you spare her. I didn't turn back or respond. Of course I wouldn't harm his mother. That old woman had been an honest farmer all her life. She had exhausted everything to support a scholar's son but enjoyed few days of comfort before passing away. Ever since Sebastian's imprisonment, Sebastian Manor had been reclaimed. The old woman was left homeless. I had her sent to the Duke's Manor's country estate, but her son's imprisonment had worsened her condition. She didn't have many days left. Sebastian didn't wait for exile. The day after seeing me, he bit his tongue and died in prison. That same night, his mother also passed away peacefully in her sleep. Thus, the dark clouds hanging over my head finally dispersed. Half a year later, Vincent played a crucial role in a decisive battle, killing the enemy general amid 10,000 troops. This battle made his name. The frontier was pacified. Vincent returned triumphant. That day I went to the city tower to see him but couldn't spot him, seeing only young men and women shouting his name. Returning home, I felt inexplicably melancholy. That evening, Father returned from court, reeking of wine. He said, today's victory banquet was extraordinarily lavish. Brother Shi's son truly is a young hero. Saying this, he seemed to recall another person he'd praised so highly and cursed in disgust before stopping. That night, I couldn't sleep. Just as I lay frustrated, light tapping came from the window. Startled, I rose. The maid still slept. I quietly opened the window. Under the silvery moonlight stood a young general in silver armor. Vincent carried the scent of wine, looking at me with barely contained excitement. My apologies. I was busy until now and finally found a moment. My heart raced. Are you mad coming here so late? If someone discovers, Vincent shook his head. I climbed the wall. No one will find out. There is something I couldn't wait to tell you. He raised his hand, revealing a bright yellow imperial edict. Vincent looked at me, his eyes shining brilliantly. I was dumbfounded. I didn't hear of any edict today. Vincent took a deep breath. This is a private edict I requested from His Majesty. He asked what reward I wanted. After thinking, I realized I only wanted you, but I feared you might not want me, so I requested this secret edict. If you are unwilling, this edict will never see the light of day. If you are willing, this will be your honor. Under the moonlight, Vincent seemed to glow with a hazy radiance. Open it and see. My breathing grew unsteady as I accepted the edict with trembling hands. Unrolling it, I read, by the grace of heaven, the Emperor decrees, having heard that Evangeline, daughter of the Duke of England, is virtuous, elegant, gentle, and kind-hearted, she is hereby granted the title of Princess of Jianan and betrothed to General Vincent Laurent, pacifier of the South. An auspicious date shall be chosen for their marriage, so decreed. There is more below. Vincent's amused reminder drew my attention. Below the edict was another line of small characters. Should the couple ever discord, fault shall lie entirely with the husband's family. The wife may inherit family property and unilaterally dissolve the marriage. I looked up at Vincent through tears. He said, I know you've been deeply hurt and find it hard to give your heart again. I only wish to remain by your side protecting you. You need not truly love me. But if one day I fail you, I must forfeit all family property. This is the promise I secured for you. I was silent for a moment, then asked him, in the previous life, how did you and Sebastian die? He showed no surprise that I knew about Rebirth, or that he was also reborn. He simply said flatly, I killed him. I didn't ask further, having killed the reigning prime minister. He surely didn't meet a good end. This man had silently devoted an entire lifetime to me. Without Rebirth, I would never have known. Yet he had no regrets. This life, too, he did everything possible to protect me. It seemed I had nothing to hesitate about. I handed the edict back to him. Then let's wait until the wedding day to read it publicly. Vincent seemed unable to believe it, frozen in place. After a long moment, he stammered. All right, just, my betrothal gifts were confiscated, so there might be less. Please don't mind. I smiled through tears. I don't mind. The wedding preparations took an entire year. Though Vincent claimed the betrothal gifts would be modest, when the time came, nothing was lacking. Not only was nothing lacking, everything was doubled from a normal betrothal. When the procession reached the Duke's manor, its tail was still leaving the She Manor that day. I became the envy of every noblewoman in the capital. After marriage, he deferred to me in all matters. Even when court gossip accused him of being henpecked, he paid no mind. He didn't confine me to the inner chambers. When free from official duties, he often took me to explore mountains and rivers. Sometimes he brought me to the frontier, teaching me to ride horses and shoot arrows. This life, I experienced something completely different from my previous existence. In the 5th year of our marriage, I became pregnant. Vincent resigned from his duties to accompany me through the entire pregnancy. But on the day of delivery, I walked to death's door and back. While unconscious, it was very noisy around me. Someone seemed to be crying. I was forced awake. Vincent stared at me with bloodshot eyes. Evangeline, you are finally awake. You terrified me. Do you know that? He then showed me the child he'd been holding. Look, our daughter. She looks so much like you. I was too weak to speak, but he chattered on. Sons are too annoying. Daughters are better. We'll have just this one, and give her all our love. I've already chosen a name. Peace. She Peace. What do you think? I paused, then struggled to form a smile. Good. From this point forward, all calamities were banished. Only peace and safety remained. In the years that followed, our daughter Peace grew into a spirited young woman, beloved by both her father and the entire household. Unlike my previous life's tragedies, she was raised with love, dignity, and the freedom to choose her own path. Vincent eventually retired from military service, and we spent our days in quiet contentment, traveling when we wished, staying home when the mood struck. Sometimes I would think back to that tea house, to the moment everything changed, when I chose to run Sebastian over rather than save him. That single decision had altered the course of my entire existence. I never forgot Pierce and Annabelle, the children from my previous life who never had a chance. In quiet moments, I would light incense and whisper prayers, hoping that wherever their souls resided, they had found peace. But I also learned that dwelling in the past served no purpose. This life was a gift. Aline I would not waste on regret or revenge. Once justice was served, Vincent often asked if I was happy. Each time, I would look at him, this man who had loved me silently through death and rebirth, who had given everything to ensure my safety and freedom, and answer truthfully, yes, I am finally, truly happy. On my deathbed many decades later, surrounded by children and grandchildren, with Vincent's weathered hand clasping mine, I closed my eyes with no regrets. I had been given a second chance, and this time I had chosen wisely. This time I had chosen love, not the passionate, consuming fire that burned everything in its path, but the steady, warming flame that sustained life through the coldest winters. This time, I had chosen right. I lived twice in this life, in this lifetime. I have lived twice as a man. Onsai, I died of grief and fury. Onsai, I was reborn for joy. That year, the frontier war ended in a great victory. I sealed my triumph at Wolf Mountain and became the youngest god of war the great Qi Empire had ever known. Yet when I returned to the capital, what awaited me was not flowers or cheers, but the mourning banners filling the Duke of England's estate. Evangeline was dead, the woman I had treasured in my heart for half my life. She died beneath a strip of white silk, with the silent consent of her so-called husband, Sebastian, the Grand Chancellor of the realm. I stormed into that cold, desolate courtyard and saw only her lifeless body, pale and still. Claudia, that venomous woman, stood nearby, smiling with brazen triumph. In that instant, something inside me shattered completely. I killed her, with the sword that had drunk the blood of countless enemies. I slit her throat before everyone present. Then, sword in hand, I walked step by step to the Chancellor's residence. Sebastian was discussing affairs with his aides in the study. When he saw me, drenched in blood, there was no shock on his face. Only relief. "You finally come," he said. I said nothing. I simply raised my sword. He did not dodge. He was right. I should have come long ago. If I had not cared about the cursed conventions of the world, if I had not ridden off to the frontier in wounded pride after she chose Sebastian, how could she have met such an end? To kill the Grand Chancellor of the Empire carried only one fate. On the day of my execution, snow fell heavily over the capital. It looked just like the day I first met her at the hunting grounds, when she knelt in the snow to save a half-frozen rabbit, then looked up at me and smiled. As my consciousness faded, I had only one thought: if there is another life, I will never let her go. Evangeline, are you all right? When I opened my eyes again, I was standing in a private room of a tea house, and there she was, the woman I had longed for beyond life and death, alive, young, breathing. Her eyes held the faint confusion of someone who had survived a calamity. Instinctively, I reached out, desperate to confirm this was real. But the moment my fingers brushed her shoulder, I remembered myself and pulled back sharply. In this life, she did not yet know my feelings. I could not frighten her. From downstairs came the sound of an argument. When that familiar, nauseating voice rang out, I knew everything had returned to the beginning. Sebastian. I saw Evangeline shudder violently, fear and hatred from our past life flooding her eyes. My heart clenched. So she remembered too. Good, very good. At least this time, she would not be deceived by that sanctimonious hypocrite again. I removed my cloak and wrapped it around her trembling shoulders. Don't listen to him, I said softly. We're leaving. I escorted her downstairs, my gaze cold as frost. Sebastian dared to block her path, even dared to call her by her given name. My hand reached for my sword faster than thought. Had she not stopped me in time, his head would already have fallen. Let it be, she said quietly. There is no need to rush. I understood her meaning. Yes, there was no rush. In this life, I would make him die knowing exactly why, die in utter disgrace. Inside the carriage, I watched her profile as she stared into space, my emotions in turmoil. This time, I would never allow her to be hurt again. When the driver shouted in alarm and Rosalie lifted the curtain to reveal the man sprawled in the road, pretending to be injured, my hand was already gripping my sword. All it would take was one word from her. Then I heard the most stirring words I have ever heard in my life. Run him over. Her voice was cool, resolute, without the slightest hesitation. My girl was no longer a lamb awaiting slaughter. She had learned to bear her claws. I looked at her, pride and heartache surging within me. Pride in her strength, pain for all she had endured. I promised her I would deal with Sebastian. Yet he moved faster than I expected, currying favor with my uncle, who was also her father. Watching her father praise him endlessly, even hinting at a marriage alliance, I panicked like never before. That night, I chased after her and blurted out, almost incoherently, "Marry me." I was terrified. Terrified she might agree out of expediency. Terrified she might refuse because she felt nothing for me. When she fled in flustered confusion, my heart sank to the depths. Fortunately, an imperial decree of arranged marriage forced open the only path left to us. She revealed her entire plan of layered schemes. As I looked into her eyes, burning with vengeance, I nodded without hesitation. Forged memorials, false accusations of bribery. I arranged everything for her. I even took the betrothal gifts my mother had prepared for me, the accumulated wealth of the Shi family over generations, and personally delivered every chest of gold and silver into Sebastian's secret vault. I did not regret it in the slightest, if it could buy her a lifetime of peace. What was a fortune? Before leaving, I teased her, saying those were my bride price. Watching her cheeks flush as she fled in embarrassment, the shadows in my heart finally lifted. The next day, I departed for war. Before the army, amid banners and shouts, I saw her figure on the city walls. Across thousands of soldiers and roaring voices, our eyes met. In that moment, I knew this battle, I would win. Because behind me stood the one person I wished to protect with my entire life. Half a year later, I returned victorious. When the emperor asked what reward I desired, I said I wanted nothing, only a secret imperial decree. That night, carrying the edict that would determine the rest of my life, I scaled the walls of the duke's estate. Under the moonlight, her fingers trembled as she took the decree. When she nodded through tears and whispered, "I don't mind," I felt as though I had gained the whole world. In my previous life, I died avenging her. In this life, I lived to protect her. On our wedding night, as I lifted her veil and gazed upon her radiant face, I made my vow, Evangeline, in this life, I, Shiwensian, will never betray you. She smiled, stars glittering in her eyes. Later, we had a daughter. I named her Anning Peace. May my Evangeline, and may our child, live their lives in safety and joy, never knowing sorrow. Whenever Anning clings to me and asks why I always indulge her mother, I smile and pat her head. Because your mother, I say softly, looking at my wife smiling nearby, is the treasure your father spent 2 lifetimes to win.